Sewing friends, welcome to my sewing room. My name's Beth, and if you're new, welcome. I have a nice big stack of some older Christmas fabric here today, and I'm going to be making a very simple Christmas quilt using some 3-inch strips. And here is my alternate fabric. I'm going to be using this snowflake fabric in every other square. The first thing I did was I took all of my fabric and I cut one 3-inch strip from each of 13 different prints. I'm going to be sewing some groups of strips together. I'm putting my squares on point, which is a little bit tricky for me to think about ahead of time or to plan. So I'm going to make some groups of strips. This first one, I'll make a set of 3 strips together, and I want the edge of my quilt to be that cream fabric. So this group of strips will be a cream and a print and a cream. This is the only set that I am making using 3 strips. The other groups of strips that I'll be sewing together will be groups of 4. And I had all of my strip sets together, sewn together. Like I said, most of these are groups of 4. I took them to my ironing board, and I'm going to press all of them towards the darker fabric using just a little bit of water in a spray bottle. And typically I will start pressing from the back and getting those seams to go towards the darker fabric, and then I'll flip it over and just give it one last press on the top. Now that I have all my strips put together, I will be cutting them all into 3-inch segments. Not all of those strips were 40 or 42 inches, so I did have a few pieces left over that are sets of 2 and 3 that I'll be slipping into my quilt once I have all of my pieces ready to go. I'm beginning on my design wall, but I will be moving to the floor. I thought it might be easier for me and you to figure out how to begin laying this quilt out. So I need a cream square on the top of every strip, and all of the strips are going to be sewn together diagonally. And just to let you know, this quilt top will end up with squares all the way around, and after it's quilted, that is when I will cut off the triangles and give this quilt a straight edge. It's a little bit easier than having all of those bias edges. I could cut triangles off and straighten the edge of the quilt before it's quilted, but I think it's better to wait so that I don't have all those bias edges. So I'm just arranging the strips so that there is a cream square all the way around my quilt top. Had an idea of where I was going with this quilt and with all these pieces. I did move everything to the floor, and I'm going to be finding out if I have enough of all these little strip sets or sets of 4 and 3s to make a quilt. And I did. I had just enough of these little squares to make a nice sized quilt. My quilt top ended up to be about 50 by 54 inches. When I had used up all of my little sets of squares, there were only a few places, like right here you can see a couple of blanks where I need to put a cream square, and over here there were a couple of areas where again I need to add another square, and at the bottom I think I needed a set of 2 in a couple of places. So it's helpful for me to just lay it out. I didn't do any planning with paper and pencil. To me, this is a little bit more fun just to play with the squares and the quilt itself. When I had it all laid out, I was able to start sewing these diagonal rows together. Now, if you were to plan this quilt with paper and pencil, you would begin with 1 square in the corner, the next row is 3, and the next row is 5, and every row you add 2 squares. So when you get the quilt as big as you want, you just sort of start decreasing by 2, and that's how I put this quilt together. So I began with that corner square, one of the corner squares, and I added it to the set of 3 and then the set of 5. And I just went along like that halfway through the quilt, and then I had to start decreasing. But it's sometimes just a little bit tricky to see how it fits together, especially as the rows get longer. But it's helpful for me to have it there on the floor. I'm thankful that my floor is big enough for this nice sized quilt. As I started out putting the quilt together, I did not pin at all of the seams. Sometimes I pin, but these were coming together really well, and since I had pressed towards the darker fabric, I just kind of had to remind the seams which way to go when I got to each seam there, and it came together really well. I started pinning when my long strips of squares were a bit longer, and that just made it go a little easier. Even though these fabrics are a bit old and dated, I just think this quilt turned out so pretty with those reds and greens and just a little bit of blue. And I am going to hang this up. Maybe one of the children will want a new Christmas quilt this year, and I'm going to wait and see if somebody likes it in the family And if they do, of course, I'm going to get it quilted up, and this will be a great Christmas gift to give away this year. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.